Hey guys, tonight we're traveling somewhere, dry, warm, and suspiciously quiet. The courtyard of a small, sun-baked home in ancient Canaan. You're sitting on a reed mat, legs stretched, elbows propped lazily on a rough mud brick wall. Overhead, the linen shade rustles in a breeze that smells faintly of dust, fig leaves, and someone's barley stew simmering too long. This isn't just any house, it's your house. You helped shape these bricks with your own hands. You remember stomping that thick red mud, mixing it with straw, forming it into blocks, with your cousin Eleazar, who always added too much water. You remember laying them under the sun, then stacking them row by row, with clay mortar that never quite dried evenly. But now, after years of good sleep and bad gossip under this roof, you notice something. A strange green patch on the back wall. It wasn't there yesterday. Or was it you rub it expecting powdery mildew? Instead, the texture is slick, cold, slightly slimy. You step back. It's spreading. And that's when the memory hits. You've heard this story before. From that old woman at the market who lost her home to the same creeping curse. Something about a priest in exorcism and the house being taken apart brick by brick while her goat watched. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your city and what time it is for you down in the comments. I love knowing who's curled up out there in the quiet corners of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up the next morning and check the wall again. It's still there. The stain has grown. It's like a soft bruise blooming beneath the surface. The neighbors whisper. Someone says it might be negatzerat, a kind of spiritual affliction. Not leprosy, not quite rot. Something else. It's mentioned in the Torah. Very niche. You try to be rational, you scrape it, it returns. You light incense. Still there. And now your wife won't touch that wall. She's put the baby in the courtyard. Your uncle suggests consulting the priest. You laugh, but the laugh sounds dry. Because deep down you know you've seen this before. The wall is sick. And if the wall is sick, so is the house. And if the house is sick, you probably wouldn't survive this in modern times. Let's face it, most of us wouldn't. No humidifier, no mold spray, no tenant rights. If the wall's sick, you're done. So you send for the priest. He's not the kind you were expecting. He doesn't wave incense and chant from a scroll. He's quiet, observant, wears linen robes and sandals caked with temple dust. He runs his hand gently over the bricks, squints at the green stain, then steps back and sighs. He doesn't say a word, just nods once and tells you to gather your family and leave. Your house has 7 days to think about what it's done. You don't argue with a priest. That's rule 1 in Bible-era life, somewhere just below. Don't boil a goat in its mother's milk, and don't steal your neighbor's fig basket. So when the priest says the house needs to be shut up for 7 days, you nod. Then you nod again. Then you pack. You gather the essential sandals, water-skin sleeping mats, and that one cooking pot that doesn't still smell like garlic. The kids whine. Your wife looks offended at the idea of camping in your cousin's courtyard for a week. But what can you do? The priest tied a linen cord across your doorway like it's under divine arrest. Nobody's allowed inside, not even the cat. And here's the odd thing, nobody questions it. Your neighbors accept it like it's just another market day. They glance sideways at your house now. One woman crosses herself with her left hand. A child asks if you're cursed. You respond with an overly loud chuckle that fools absolutely no one. You sit by the fire that evening outside the gates. The stars come out. The walls of your house, now distant, silent, and sealed, stare back like a forgotten guest. You never noticed how alive a home feels until you're locked out of it. The priest returns a week later. He steps inside alone. You wait. There's no ceremony, no trumpet, just silence. He emerges after a while, face unreadable. There's still something there, he murmurs, and suddenly it feels like your house has been whispering secrets while you were gone. He gestures, and 2 young men in temple apprentice garb come forward with little tools, bone scrapers, linen rags, a bowl of cedar oil. They look more like gardeners than exorcists, but their job is clear. They're about to scrape the unclean spots off your house like it's a giant piece of infected skin. One curls his lip as he touches the stain. Still wet, he says. Historians still argue whether this mildew was genuinely supernatural or just ancient mold in a desert climate. But when you're watching someone chip your walls like they're peeling fruit, the distinction doesn't matter. It feels alive. The scraped plaster is collected into a clay basin. You're told not to touch it. It will be taken outside the camp, the catch-all solution for anything unclean from leftover meat to leprous sandals. Apparently your plaster is now morally compromised. The apprentices scrape and scrape. The stain fights back, reappearing on the same spot minutes later, as if your house is bleeding from beneath. One assistant mutters something about houses having memory. You pretend not to hear. By nightfall, your home looks skeletal. Bare patches of wall reveal the straw and mud beneath. The outer coating, once smooth and pale, is now blotchy, bruise-scraped raw. You run your hand along a freshly exposed edge, and it flakes under your fingers. You feel something else too. Not sadness exactly. More like betrayal. This place sheltered your wedding, your children's first words, the time you got food poisoning, and lay groaning beside the oven for 2 days. You trusted these walls. And now, they've turned against you. You don't sleep much that night, because the question that won't stop humming behind your eyes is this: if your house can get sick, can it also go mad? The next morning you notice the red, not blood, clay. One of the priest's assistants probably has marked the doorway with a smear of red clay. Just a quick streak like a finger dragged across your lintel. Subtle, but unmistakable. You ask what it means. He shrugs. It's for tracking, which sounds official but somehow vague, just in case the infection returns. You nod slowly. In ancient Judea, red clay was as common as dust used in bricks, vessels, even baby toys. But when it shows up on your house uninvited, it carries weight. People notice. You hear someone in the street whisper, "Zara," followed by that theatrical little gasp. Folks save for gossip involving bodily fluids. The house is technically clean for now. The scraping has stopped the spread, at least for a moment. But it's on watch, and so are you. Which means no one wants to sit next to you at the well, and the potter who used to give your kid a date now gives him suspicious side-eye. You start noticing things. Sounds, the creak of old beams at night, crumbling dust in corners, the way a chill seems to cling to the inner walls like breath that hasn't fully exhaled. Then one morning it's back, the same green-gray blotch blossoming like rot just beneath the surface, in the exact spot they scraped. Maybe darker this time, maybe wider. You don't even argue when the priest arrives again. This time he doesn't pause. He glances once at the mark, exhales slowly, and says, "We have to take it down. Take it down. Your house." You blink. The priest folds his hands in that calm Levitical way, like he's about to tell you your oxen have joined a monastery. The whole structure is unclean. The clay is saturated. It must be dismantled. You think about arguing. You even open your mouth to do it. But the priest is already walking, already summoning men with ropes and chisels. No scrolls, no prayers. Just practiced efficiency. It turns out taking down a mud brick house is quicker than building one. They don't demolish with fire or hammers. They unmake it, brick by brick, row by row. The walls fall like cake layers being gently peeled apart. Historians still argue whether entire homes were truly leveled for mildew or whether this was reserved for severe spiritual defilement. But in your case, it's happening right now. So that argument feels a little academic. Your wife weeps softly as the walls collapse. You just stand there, holding a wooden spoon for no reason. Inside, beneath the crumbling clay, a lizard scurries away. Dust swirls like incense. The baby claps, delighted by the commotion. A neighbor offers you her storage shed to sleep in. You nod, still clutching the spoon. The red clay mark is gone now, buried with the rest of the house. But something still lingers. Not on the ground. On you. It's the realization that your home, your sacred, private, soup-scented space was never really yours. It could get sick, it could be judged, and it could be taken apart without even raising its voice. The ground where your house once stood looks oddly smooth. It's unsettling how quickly a home becomes a pile of dust and fragments, especially when the people dismantling it are so polite about it. A few walls still stand half high like ancient teeth in a tired mouth, but most of it is gone. The oven, the doorway, even the painted niche where you kept your oil lamp. All gone. You don't cry, but you do stare a little longer than necessary. The priest doesn't offer condolences. He offers quarantine instructions. You are not to build again, not yet. Not until the soil beneath your house has been left alone for a set number of days. 7. Maybe more. The timeline's vague. Probably on purpose. Maybe they want the land to forget you for a while. You camp again in your cousin's courtyard. You count birds. You try to sleep on a mat that smells faintly of goats. And you wait. One afternoon, a neighbor stops by with a suggestion. You know you can ask for a blessing before rebuilding, he says, especially if you think the sickness wasn't just mold. You blink. Not just mold. He lowers his voice. Sometimes a spirit gets in. Of course, because mildew is one thing, but unclean mildew, that's a whole other category. In Bible times, sickness wasn't always bacterial. It might be spiritual. You'd think that would mean less scrubbing, but actually it means more rules and more cedar oil. You ask the priest, and he nods solemnly. Yes, there's a process. But first you'll need to mark out your new wall lines, gather fresh materials, and most importantly, invite him back once the new structure is ready for inspection. You begin rebuilding slowly. Each brick is kneaded, dried, and stacked by hand. The neighbors come by offering advice you didn't ask for. Use lime this time, one says. That'll stop the spread. Another insists on mixing cedar powder into the mortar. Someone else sells you a charm made of sheep's teeth. You don't believe in charms, but you still buy it. Historians still argue whether these ritual rebuildings were about health or holiness. But from where you stand, sunburned, clay-streaked, and slightly desperate, they feel like both. The new house rises. It's smaller, slightly crooked, and definitely not as cozy. But it smells clean, like warm dust and drying straw. You almost like it. You almost trust it. Then the priest returns. He brings with him a basket containing 2 birds. One will be sacrificed. The other will be released into the open fields carrying the impurity far away. You pretend this doesn't sound like a hostage situation for birds. He walks the perimeter of your new house, murmuring phrases you don't fully catch. He sprinkles cedarwood oil and hyssop water on the threshold. He dips a scarlet thread into the blood of the first bird, then flicks it across your freshly set lintel. The remaining bird twitches in his hands. Then he lets it go. It flaps once, twice, then vanishes into the hot blue sky. You watch it go thinking, well, that's either very good or very bad. You wake up the next morning and your walls are still standing. That's progress. You sniff cautiously around the corners. No greenish streaks, no dampness, just the usual dry plaster smell and a faint scent of last night's lentil stew. The cat returns too, as if her royal highness has decided the new house is worthy of her paws. She does a full perimeter check, then curls up under your sleeping mat, like nothing ever happened. But there's one final step, the ritual disposal. All the scraped off plaster, broken bricks, and anything that touched the sick parts of the old house must be taken outside the city. You're told this with the same tone someone might use to say, take out the trash, but this is no ordinary dump run. You haul the pieces out past the village walls where thorn bushes grow taller than a man and the air smells like hot metal. There, far from everyone's favorite fig trees, lies the ritual dustbin, a stony hollow filled with other people's problems. Fragments of pottery, old garments, even a goat skull or 2. You add your cursed plaster to the pile, and for good measure you toss in the sheep tooth charm. The wind kicks up. You squint. You whisper a little something under your breath. Not a prayer exactly, more like a warning. Stay here. You return home lighter. Not happy exactly, but cleared. Of course not everyone agrees on what cleared means. Some say you're now clean in the eyes of the community, but not necessarily in the eyes of heaven. Others believe the opposite. Your reputation may still be awkward, but spiritually, you're spotless. Historians still argue whether the ritual disposal site had any official religious purpose or was just an early trash heap with good branding. But to you, it feels like the stain has been buried. You step into your new house. It's hot and oddly quiet. The kids are out. Your wife is boiling something that smells like onions and maybe feet. The cat is snoring in the corner. And then you notice it, one last brick placed slightly off. You crouch, tilt your head. It's not sick, just crooked. But you leave it there anyway. As a reminder, you sit down against the cool inner wall and close your eyes. And for the first time in weeks, the house doesn't press back. A few days pass. People stop staring at your doorway like it might sneeze on them. Children walk past your house again instead of crossing the street. Even the potter who side-eyed your kid the other week gives him a broken jug to play with. That's practically an apology. But you're still uneasy, because the truth is, no one knows why your house got sick. The priest never said. The neighbors just guess. And you lie awake some nights, tracing your memory like a map. Did you bring something unclean into the house? Did your cousin leave that idol figurine in the storage nook again? Or maybe it wasn't your fault at all. The Torah isn't exactly clear. It uses the word niga, which means plague affliction, or possibly just trouble. And in ancient Israel, trouble could mean anything from mildew to metaphysical mayhem. You walk through your new home hand on the walls, listening. Are they breathing, remembering? And that's when the door creaks. Just a little. Just enough to remind you. The priest had another method for marking a cursed home. Red clay was only one sign. The other, isolation. If no one visits you for too long, it's not always about the walls, it's about you. You go outside and wave at the neighbor. He waves back. Good sign. You clean your courtyard. Offer a fig to the water seller. Better. You even invite the priest to dinner. He declines. That corner brick, he says, pointing at the one you left crooked, you should replace it. You nod, smile, but you don't. Not because you like it, honestly, it annoys you, but because you need a little reminder that houses are living things, that a home is not immune, that comfort takes tending, that even walls remember pain. Historians still argue whether homes could retain spiritual residue if a sickness once expelled could return. Some say that's superstition. Others say that's theology. But in your house where the light slants just so and the wind knows your name, you're not so sure it matters. Weeks pass. You return to your routine, drawing water, baking flatbread, occasionally yelling at the goat for standing on your fig sapling. The house seems stable. The walls have dried, the air smells only faintly of clay and onions, and the children have stopped asking if the bird is going to come back. But one afternoon, someone else's house gets sick. It starts the same way, a greenish bloom on the lower wall just behind the olive press. Then the hushed questions, the visits from the priest, the linen cord tied across the doorway. You watch it all unfold like deja vu with new actors. But this time, you're not inside the story. You're the one giving advice now. Don't touch the plaster, you say. It's not just mold. You even offer your cousin's courtyard, what goes around, right? And then the priest stops you in the street. Just so you know, he says, rubbing his beard. It's happening more often now. Third house this month. That gives you pause, because it raises a question no one wants to ask out loud. Why so many sick houses? Is it the weather, the soil, or is something else moving among the bricks and beams of this little town? Some say it's judgment. Others say it's just old mud. Historians still argue whether these outbreaks were symbolic morality lessons or literal hygiene codes. But you've lived through it. You've seen what a wall can do when it decides to rot from within. There's a theory told mostly by tired shepherds and bored grave diggers that a house can become cursed by what happens inside it. Not what you eat or say, but the weight of things left unspoken. Secrets held too tightly. Anger swallowed. Prayers half finished. You think of that late-night argument you and your wife never resolved. You think of your son asking if it was his fault the house crumbled. And you begin to wonder, maybe walls don't just remember. Maybe they listen. You spend more time outside these days. Not because your new house is uncomfortable, if anything, it's sturdier than the old one, but because something about the open air feels safer now. Less likely to trap things. Less likely to echo. You sit under the fig tree and watch the shadows crawl along the courtyard wall. You listen to the quiet. You hear the pigeons, the occasional shuffle of sandals, and once or twice a strange creak inside the house when no one's in it. That last one you pretend not to hear. There's a term you've heard the old men whisper at the gates, bottom chime living houses. They don't mean metaphorically, they mean literally. Places that somehow wake up after enough years of holding sorrow, laughter, blood, and secrets. Some claim it only happens when a home sees too many births or too many deaths. Others say it's when a house has held too much silence. You never believed in any of that, but lately you find yourself murmuring apologies when you trip over the threshold. You start treating your home like it has moods. You open the shutters early, let it breathe. You sweep out the corners. You light a little olive oil lamp in the kitchen even when it's not dark yet. And when you speak in anger, you speak outside. Your neighbor, yes, the one whose house is now under priestly quarantine, asks you something odd. Do you think the house knew you raise an eyebrow? Knew what that it was? Dying? That it needed to go? You want to laugh. Instead, you look down at your hands. Dry, calloused. Still stained faintly from rebuilding. Maybe, you say. Maybe it knew before I did. Historians still argue whether ancient homes were treated as sacred spaces or simply functional shelters. But in every village, there's always that one house people refuse to live in, the one everyone claims is cursed. And maybe that's not superstition. Maybe it's just memory. Because when you step inside your own house now, you walk softer. You pause at the lintel. You touch the walls with the back of your fingers like checking for fever. And sometimes you swear the walls feel warm. You remember the first time someone sprinkled cedar oil over your head. It was during the cleansing ritual, the one where the priest flicked bird blood on your lintel and murmured things in a tone you weren't sure was blessing or warning. Afterward, he dabbed a bit of cedar oil on your forehead. The smell was sharp, clean, and oddly grounding. Like you could suddenly smell what starting over felt like. Now the scent lingers in your memory like an old song. And this morning, as the sun creeps through the eastern shutter, you catch a hint of it again. You follow the smell through the house into the cool dimness of the main room. Nothing looks different, and yet something feels still. You kneel and brush your hand along the base of the wall where the old infection once appeared. The plaster is smooth, firm. You almost expect it to pulse like skin. There's no green stain, but you light a lamp anyway, just in case. You remember how the priest used cedar oil and hyssop during the cleansing. Some said it was symbolic cedar for strength, hyssop for purification. Others claimed the oil itself had properties that kept evil from settling too long in one place. Historians still debate whether the use of these materials was based on practical medicine or ritual theater. But honestly, when your house once bled green and tried to evict you, you'll take whatever theater you can get. There's something deeply odd about watching your home go through a ceremony more complicated than your own wedding. 2 birds, cedar, wood scarlet, thread hyssop leaves. It's not exactly a casual afternoon blessing. And yet it worked. Probably. You stand in the center of the room and slowly turn in a circle. 1 wall, 2 walls, 3, 4. No sign of sickness. The air is dry. The floor is cool. The shadows behave themselves. And then you hear it. A flutter just outside. You step onto the threshold, blinking in the brightness. A bird, small, brown, perched on the edge of your roof. You wonder if it's the one the priest released? The one that flew off weeks ago carrying the impurity into the wild? Probably not, but you smile anyway, because for the first time it feels like the house is breathing normally again. And maybe so are you. By now you've learned not to take your house for granted. Every time you press your palm to a wall, you do it a little like a priest yourself, testing, feeling, listening. There's still a tiny part of you that half expects the sickness to return. A streak of green. A patch of dark softness that wasn't there the night before, but it hasn't. Still, you follow the rules. Once a week, you open every window, even when it's windy. You burn a pinch of hyssop and walk around with it like a sleepy incense parade. You talk to the house too. Not dramatically, just a soft greeting here and there. A good morning when you enter. A thank you when the roof holds during a storm. You're not superstitious. Not exactly. But when your entire home once had to be exorcised by birds and blood and cedar oil, you pick up a few new habits. You've also started sweeping the corners more carefully, not just because dust collects, but because corners are where stories gather. That's what your grandmother used to say. Corners hear secrets, she'd whisper bent over her broom. Sweep them often or they'll whisper back. You thought she was being poetic. Now you're not so sure. The ritual fragments, the dust scraped from the original house, the broken bricks, the stained lintel still exist somewhere outside the city. You don't think about them much, but every once in a while you remember that those pieces were once your home. They soaked in your breath, your quarrels, your laughter, and then they were cut away and dumped far from sight. Not unlike how people bury the parts of themselves they no longer want. Historians still argue whether these practices served any practical purpose or were just complex ways of controlling social anxiety. But you've come to understand something they often miss. It wasn't just about disease. It was about trust. The community had to trust your walls again. You had to trust your own roof not to turn on you in the night. And now finally you do, mostly. Still, you keep that crooked brick, just in case. Word gets around that you've rebuilt. Not just physically, but thoroughly. That your home was torn down, ritually cleansed and reborn. Some people say you're unlucky. Others treat you with a strange new respect. You've become the village's walking cautionary tale part, gossip part, folk hero. That's the man whose house got exorcised, they whisper, as if it happened to your spleen. At the market, one woman offers you extra barley as a blessing for your foundations. Another hands you a sprig of dried hyssop like a lucky charm. You take both. Why not? Then one day a man you've never seen before comes to your gate. He's older, quiet, carries himself like someone who spent time on long roads. He looks around your courtyard, then says, "They say your house got sick." You nod. He nods back, then adds, "Mine too." And suddenly, it's like looking into a mirror that's seen further ahead. He tells you how his home was never the same after a family dispute, how the walls felt heavier, the air more stubborn. Then came the damp spot that wouldn't go, the sleepless nights, the cracks that seemed to whisper when no one else was listening. You recognize the story, and in that quiet moment you realize something unexpected: you're not alone. Other homes got sick. Other people watched their walls turn against them. Maybe not all had priests, maybe some just left, but it's not just you, and there's strange comfort in that. Historians still argue whether these events reflect ancient sanitation laws or theological metaphors. But as you pour this man a cup of cool well water and offer him a seat, it doesn't feel like either. It feels like survival. You share bread nods, silences. You don't need to explain the crooked brick. He sees it and understands. Two people, two healed homes, a quiet lunch under the fig tree. And in the background, your house rests easy. It's festival season again, which means noise, drums, perfume in the air. Cousins you forgot existed spilling into your courtyard with dried dates and complicated opinions about sandals. Your new home is tested by it all: the extra weight, the laughter, the clumsy elbows knocking pottery. And for the first time, you're not worried it will crack under the pressure. Still, as you lay out woven mats and open your door wide for the visiting relatives, you catch yourself glancing at that one spot near the lintel, the place where the stain began. It's clean, of course, but habit is habit. Your uncle, who once insisted your house was doomed, claps you on the back and says, "Feels solid now," as if he personally rebuilt it using divine elbow grease. You let him have the moment. Later that evening, a child asked the question you knew was coming. Is this the house that tried to eat you? Everyone laughs, you smile. But the question sits there like a pebble in your sandal. You tell the child no, that house is gone. Then you add, this one learned from its mistakes. That satisfies them, mostly. You serve the food: lentils, fresh bread, olives, and the scent fills the air like a slow hymn. Someone starts a song. Someone else taps a wine jug in rhythm. The walls echo but gently, as if remembering how to be joyful. And here's the strange part: your house feels different now. Not just cleaned, not just rebuilt, but settled, like a wound that finally closed. Historians still argue whether ritual house cleansings had any psychological effect on the family, whether it helped them feel safe again. But sitting in your courtyard watching the light bounce off plastered walls and catching your wife humming in the kitchen, you'd say the answer is yes, because trauma sticks to places, and healing, if done well, sticks deeper. The child returns later, sleepy-eyed and sugar-stained, and asks if the house is happy now. You nod. Tonight, I think it is. You rise early the next morning. The courtyard is quiet, just the scrape of a breeze and the soft cooing of doves nesting on the roof beams. You sit with a small bowl of goat milk and honey, your breakfast warming in your hands, and you look at your walls. They glow gold in the early sun. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you they're here watching, keeping. You remember the rituals, the birds, the red clay, the dust on your skin when your old house fell, and for a strange moment, you feel grateful for it all. Because now you know your home. Not just the layout or where the creaky spot is near the door, or how much sun the kitchen gets at mid-morning, but the spirit of it, the way it breathes, the weight of its silence, the honesty in its creaks. Your neighbors still talk. A few still cross the road before passing too close, but others have followed your lead. Small things airing their homes, more often keeping cedar wood hanging near the doors, even inviting the priest to inspect a suspicious corner before it becomes a problem. The village has changed. You never meant to start anything. You just wanted to sleep without wondering if your walls were plotting your removal, but healing ripples, even when you don't intend it. Historians still argue whether the Levitical laws about sick houses were metaphor, myth, or divine health code. But you've stopped worrying about categories. You lived the story, it left its fingerprints. And that's enough. You finish your breakfast. The sun is higher now. Your children tumble out of the door chasing each other with sticks and absolutely no concern for ancient impurity laws. You call after them. They ignore you. Your wife laughs from the doorway, and inside the house listens soft, warm, and finally at peace. The next time you see the priest, he doesn't come to inspect anything. He's walking back from the village granary with a sack slung over his shoulder. You almost don't recognize him without his ceremonial linen robes. Just simple wool dusty sandals and the look of someone who's been asked too many questions before sunrise. You invite him in for water. He hesitates just for a breath and then nods. Inside, he runs his hand along the new plaster, not with scrutiny this time, but familiarity, like he's greeting an old acquaintance who's finally gotten their life together. You did it right, he says. You nod, but then you ask something you've wanted to ask for a while. How many houses have you had to tear down? He drinks first, wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, then answers, more than I care to count. You wait. Most of them don't rebuild, he adds. You look around your simple space, the broom by the door, the jug of olives, the ever-shedding cat, and wonder why you did. Maybe because you were stubborn, or broke, or because deep down you didn't want to let go of what the walls remembered, good and bad. You know he says setting the cup down, it was never really about the mildew. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles faintly. That was just the symptom. You want to press him, ask what he really means. But he stands, thanks you, and walks out into the street. And just like that, you're alone again. Only you're not. You're with a house that knows you now. A house that's survived its trial by mold and memory. And as you run your palm along the wall, you realize something important. This house isn't just shelter anymore. It's witness. Historians still argue whether ancient people truly believed walls could carry judgment. But you felt it. You've lived with the silence, the watching, the quiet forgiveness that only a rebuilt space can give. You pick up your broom, and for once, sweeping the corners feels like a kind of prayer. The year turns. The fig tree sheds, then blooms again. Your children grow taller. One of them carves a smiley face into the corner of the courtyard wall and tries to blame the cat. You don't repaint it. You just leave it there, one more mark in a home that has learned to carry marks well. The house creaks sometimes. Nothing suspicious, just the gentle groan of clay adjusting to weather and time. But you always notice. You always pause. You always listen. It's funny how memory seeps into the mortar. Sometimes you catch yourself whispering things when no one else is around. Thank yous, apologies, instructions for nothing in particular. You talk to the walls the way some people talk to God, half believing they might respond. And some days in the hush between footsteps or the soft sigh of wind through the shutter, you imagine they do. The priest doesn't come anymore. He doesn't need to. There's no stain, no spreading rot, no talk of unclean bricks or hyssop bundles. Just you, your family, and the slow, kind rhythm of being safe again. You still visit the ritual dustbin once a season. You don't know why. Maybe to remind yourself of what's gone, or maybe to be sure nothing's trying to come back. The pile is still there, fragments of once sick homes, faded pottery shards, brittle scraps of old clay. You pick up a piece once. It crumbles in your hand like dried bread. No evil leaps out, just dust. Historians still argue whether the ancient laws about sick houses had long-term effects on how people viewed space, purity, and responsibility. But here's what you know. Your house had to fall apart before it could become real. And now it sleeps when you sleep, breathes when you breathe, and when you wake at night to check on a strange sound, 9 times out of 10, it's just the cat knocking something over. But that one time it's the house, reminding you it's still here and still yours. The lamps are out now. The soft glow of the fire has faded, and the night has wrapped its arms around your walls like a blanket, freshly shaken out. The breeze whispers through the shutters just enough to flutter the edge of the curtain, just enough to make you pull your blanket higher and curl a little deeper into rest. The house is quiet, not the eerie kind of quiet that watches you, but the kind that holds you. The kind of quiet that settles deep into the bricks, the floor, the very grain of the wood above your head. It doesn't ask anything of you, it simply keeps you. And in that, keeping you drift. You drift past the sound of creaking beams and sleepy breath. You drift through the scent of old cedar and well-worn linen. You drift through everything this house has carried, the joys, the worries, the laughter, the grief. And you know it will keep carrying them gently the way earth holds roots and rivers hold light. So rest. The walls are steady, the floor remembers your step, the wind has calmed, and somewhere far beyond this quiet, the bird you released is still flying.